Hey friends, welcome to Your Story Matters podcast. My name is Michaela, and I am so happy you're here. My hope for this show is that we experience the power of storytelling and understand that we are the main characters in our story so that we can live as our truly authentic selves. You're in the right place to hear real stories that will challenge, inspire, and encourage you on your personal growth journey. I hope you enjoy. Today on the show is Lisa Foy. Lisa is a survivor of domestic violence, intimate partner abuse, and dark triad abuse. She is currently living with CPTSD as a result of the abuse she endured. Lisa did something that not many expected her to do. She grew out of the ashes of her former life. Within the peace she created from nothing, she learned how to start again and heal the wounds of abuse. Lisa is able to venture out now and help others on their healing journey as a guide from her experiences. She has built her home and raised her daughter, who also did healing work and is on her own journey of recovery. Lisa is building her business. She is rediscovering who she is and living free. She is a former figure skater, dancer, gymnast, and musician. In her healing, she has grown into her gifts of psychic evidential mediumship, and she reads tarot in a unique way. She learned Reiki and is a master teacher, trauma-informed yoga guide, and has studied witchcraft and the connection to Mother Gaia for many years. Lisa has helped use these studies to help the healing process and to connect not only to herself and develop self-love from an inner standpoint, but from an out perspective as well. Here's our conversation.
We're going to get into it, and it is going to be good. We're already matching, so it's going to be a great episode if you're watching on YouTube. So Lisa, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Michaela. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yes, we start the show like we always do with the big overarching question that kind of catch people off guard or they're ready for it. But either way, people always have some kind of big reaction to the question. So without further ado, what is your story?
Well, my story has a lot of valleys and mountains in it. And I am an abuse survivor. I have survived narcissistic abuse, BWS, which is battered woman syndrome. And I have also survived narcissistic victim syndrome, which is coined as, I'm sorry, I do struggle a little bit to talk about this because it is still so deep in my system. I've worked very hard over the last 8 years since the separation to work on healing. So I struggle a little bit, but, I was trapped in a very unfortunate marriage where I was victimized continually. Unfortunately, my children were victimized through that victimization as well by living in the circumstances. I took those circumstances and I threw them all right out the window. I divorced this individual who was my abuser. And in that time that we were separating and divorcing, he moved in across the street from me to continue his reign of terror. I only took that for a very short period of time. I threw a for sale sign on the house. I actually sent the children over to live with him for a year so that they could learn what an abuser was and is. I moved away. My children came back, and I have learned to heal, to grow, how to rebuild my life after living all of this, and how to restart from ground zero, which it can actually be a really, really healthy place to be, believe it or not.
I'm
So,
so glad that you said that.
yeah,
And let me know as we go on if there's something you do not want to answer. This is your show. I'm facilitating it. So really definitely want to be respectful of where you are. I like that
right.
you said ground zero. It can be a really healthy place to be. Let's just start there. Normally I start somewhere else, but let's just start there with that because you hear starting over and you're like, there's so much you don't realize until you have to start over how much starting over actually consists of. So share that.
Well, starting over, I mean, it wasn't completely. I didn't walk out and walk into the shelter system the way many women do, and they walk in with their purse, their kids, and the clothes on their back. I was lucky enough to be able to have my home and to keep my belongings. So that was my ground zero. I still had my things. I still had tangible hold on some things. My mother at the time was still alive, so I still had a family member there that was, there. She was suffering with dementia and whatnot, but she was still there for me. And I will cry when I tell her story when you ask that next question, but that's okay. But the ground zero was like a cleansing. It was a cleansing of all the garbage from the past. And it was wiped out and completely eliminated. And although I felt as if I had nothing, I really didn't. I had a clean slate, and that clean slate was one of the most refreshing things in the world. Although there were tears on that slate and there were a lot of painful things that I had to go through to heal and to work on the healing. Healing is a journey; we're never finished. But I felt so relieved that I didn't have the pressure of being in the narcissistic abusive position of being receiving that type of behavior any longer. So the ground zero, good place to be.
Yeah, that's good. So this episode will come out a couple weeks after my 1-year divorce anniversary. And so I did walk away with the shirt off my back,
Yeah.
my books, my clothes, and left most of everything there. And so
Yeah.
there is that point where if you do have that safety, if you get to keep a house, an apartment, some kind of establishment, and that's not to say that walking away doesn't provide the same kind of grounding, but it is just
Yeah.
a wild thing to be how precious homes are, the energy that we
Yeah.
create to make the spaces what they are, but I think that's the beauty of just walking through life is we can carry that same magic into every single room that we enter into. And so now a year later, getting to live in my own place and just being
Right.
able to decorate and just buy new things. I'm really in that space of like, sorry, I love thrifting. I love an antique store, but everything is going to be new in this place.
It's right? I mean, it's yours. It's your energy. You've chosen it. You have made the effort. It's about you. It has nothing to do with anybody else. I mean, I had a basement full of race cars and that kind of stuff at one point in time. I don't like the sound of race cars, and engines and that kind of stuff. So for me, it was like I was living in an environment that was not inclusive of me. So leaving that environment, even though I bought the family home and tried to make that environment mine, it was never mine. It was always sort of ours, and I couldn't cleanse it of that. There was not enough sage in this world to deal with that. And I put a for sale sign on the house and I had to go. And I found myself out in the middle of nowhere in the country. And boy, was that ever beneficial because, I had that I could pick up the stick that I wanted in my reading room. I could pick up, the pine cones that I wanted to put into the fire that night. And all those lovely things that were about me. And it was amazing. Really, really amazing.
There is
Oh,
something quite, I don't know what the word is, but when you get to pick those things for you, and we're not speaking of this in any kind of selfish light, but it's okay to pick stuff for you. It's okay to recognize what was theirs, ours, mine, and sometimes the lines get blurred, but coming down to the basis of like you are always your own human being no matter what. And so picking out these
yeah.
little simple pleasures or whatever is maybe new to you in that season or not, I think can be a very powerful thing if we recognize like, and I'm finding now in this stage of life, I'm doing things differently than I ever have before, even in the most like subtle of ways.
Right.
Everything is important. So don't discount those small little moments.
But those small little moments of doing those things for ourselves are so healing. They actually help us regulate our nervous system. It gives us a sense of power and control back to our own lives. And that sense of power and control is so important to regulating that vagus nervous system and getting yourself back into functioning in society. And I found that when I was able to unpack the lamp and put it on the table where I wanted it, it was just like, and it was the simplest action.
Yeah.
It was an action of next to nothing in everyday scheme of day-to-day movements, but it meant the world to me. And I remember unpacking box after box after box, deciding what I was going to keep and what I was going to give away,
Yeah.
and I had my power back.
Yeah.
I really did, and even though it was through tear-stained eyes and all those kinds of things, because we had at that point in time, I had to sell my mother's home and put my mother into residence so that she could be cared for, and a number of the items did come from her home. But, it felt good that I knew mom had wanted me to have that, and I knew that she wanted me to have that in a special place in my home. So I found that special place, but it was about me finding that special place. No one else was involved.
Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right. What was the catalyst for I have to go? Because I remember I think about that in my own situation where looking back and in therapy and all of those things, it's like my moment of I knew it was over was way sooner than I thought it actually was. I can like there's a couple different moments if we look at like a calendar year of like I can look back to this memory and be like, yeah, that was one of them. But the more I go back, it was way earlier than I thought. And so it was months that I had stayed. Because a lot of thing and a lot of things had to happen for that final decision to be kind of solidified. So walk us through that because any kind of situation involving narcissistic abuse, any kind of abuse, there just feels like I can't leave the situation is one of those like forefrontal thoughts. So kind of when does it get to the point of, you know what, we can actually make this decision and it is a good one to make.
Well, I had threatened multiple times. I want a divorce. I need to go. If you can't manage your behavior, then this has got to end. Then he would go through this 3-week period being okay, but then it would dwindle off and the nightmare would begin again. So as I started to recognize the patterns, I could see the threats would become more, shall we say, deeper, more threatening. The patches of silence would become longer, that type of stuff. We finally went out to an evening with friends and he never came out with my friends. And this time he did. And there was an incident that happened at the event. And a friend of mine said to me, that's abusive the way he's treating you. And it was something that someone else had done. And he took offense to it. And he was intoxicated at this time and he was speaking harshly to me, controlling what I was doing, and it became very public. And a number of people at the event recognized that it was abuse. And then all of a sudden, like I said, this friend of mine came up to me and said, that's abuse. Now, our daughters were staying at my house that evening. She came back with me to pick up her daughter because that was not going to happen. She was very concerned for my safety that night because he was extremely aggressive. But it was that night was the pivotal turning point. That was it. It's done. It has to be over. And I remember that. That was, sort of in the fall of 2017. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget standing out on the end of the driveway with her while they're waiting for the Uber for her daughter. And he was pacing in the garage, drinking and smoking and cursing. And he did go in and pass out, but that was the whole pivotal moment of where everything started to really shift. His behavior was beyond. He had taken it public, and at that point in time, now my friend was a school teacher, so she worked in spec ed, so she knew the signs and symptoms of abuse, and she recognized it right away. And she began to work with me to set the patterns or not the patterns, sorry, pardon me, to set the out escape route with me at that time. So well, thank goodness for her.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
such a thing when you look at any moment in time like a separating from a marriage and just realizing the people that have been placed in your life either years and years before or very recently as it was in my situation, how much they are there to guide and help and protect and point things out. And so that's
Mhm.
not lost on me. And so to hear that, knowing that she had the background that she did in recognizing abuse,
Yep.
then she has the children's perspective of working with kids and kind of seeing how that all is kind of manifested and kind of how it comes out in children. Like what a gift to really have someone that can
Yep.
speak in. And I think a lot of people have that support
Yep.
system and a lot of people struggle with that of people not really believing. So why is it important on that note to kind of like what we're saying is the truth? And I don't want to say like we're making stuff up because that's just it's not it at all. It's kind of crazy because
Yeah.
no one expects us to kind of say these things of his behavior is this, he's
No.
saying this, he's doing this, yada yada. So yeah, I don't kind of know what my question is, which is a first for me, but in that kind of way of how do we learn not to overlook when people are saying really, really important things that we should not just pass.
Well, that's the thing. We need to know what coercive control looks like from an external perspective. We need to be shown what abuse looks like. We see abuse as bruises, broken bones, hospital visits, police involvement, um, the justice system involvement and that kind of stuff. And that's really truthfully, yes, I was struck, but he got really smart. I bruise very easily. So he hit me in my hairline. So I would concuss and the damage would last longer and build up, et cetera. But we don't have that physical see. So we have to look at the behavior patterns of the victim. We have to look at what is happening around the family. We have to look at what is happening. Is she being withdrawn or he for that matter too, right? Is that individual being withdrawn from the family? Are we seeing that person as much? Is the availability to go over to their home restricted? Are they saying, no, I don't need things when you know that they do? Like, what else is going on in there? And how do we have that talk to start these things? And how do we make sure that that person is safe? So, those are all really good points to bring forward, Michaela, because we really do need to deeply look at how we see these things. And it's a sensitive person that sees them. Not everybody sees them because, we get busy in life, right? I mean, it happens. And even family members get busy and overlook it. I know my family members didn't recognize any of it at all. When I came forward and said something to them, they were, oh, no, 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 never, 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 right? We've never seen it. And I said, well, here's the thing. Does a criminal perform an act that is criminal in front of the world, or do they do it under the shadows and behind closed doors? They do it under shadows and behind closed doors. That's why we don't see abuse, because it is criminal to do these things. I mean, if we actually look at the basic fundamentals of coercive control, mind torture, the way that narcissistic abusers actually change what happens within human psyche, it is against the Geneva Convention, is torture and brainwashing, and completely and totally. I've looked this up so many times because I've been questioned about it so many times. But it is, and we are protected from it by the Geneva Convention in wartime. We're in wartime, so we should be protected by it. But people just don't. So back to the original question, people just don't see it because we're not trained to see it. We're told to ignore it, and it's the NIMBY, not in my backyard. All of that is just a mind your own business. Once the door closes, it's none of my business. But here's the thing: once the door closes, you have to make it your business, because I'm going to tell you, our sisters are dying. Our sisters are dying through being assaulted. They're dying through suicide, and they're driven to suicide. Okay, they're driven to suicide because the abuser wants them to be so crazy. And suicide is the ultimate goal for it, because I know my abuser definitely wanted me to do that to myself. And there's no way he was going to win. I mean, I was just too determined, right? To, I think in a way, because I understood after a while that this was a push and pull game, that um I was there had to be a winner to it. And for me, the winning was surviving it and living a new life and that kind of stuff. It's about the recognition. It's about the understanding. It's about making sure that the victim is safe. And to be safe, oh boy, there's a lot. Like, I mean, that's what the whole other can of worms is, to try to get a victim safe. Because being safe, the scariest time is when a victim leaves, because that is when most women are murdered by their abusive, controlling partner, narcissistic. And I mean, we can put this whole thing right under the dark triad, Machiavellianism, sociopathy, and narcissism. Like, I mean, we should just call them dark triad because they all house some part of the dark triad within their personalities, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah. And I'm thinking back to, Hollywood does a lot of good, and then it also does a lot of not so good in terms of what actually representation looks like. And it's, yes, it is bruises, yes, it
yeah,
is kicked a dog around, mentality, but it's like it's so hard to put on camera like what is happening behind closed doors if it's not all physical.
yep,
And I'll go on the record for saying that it is not that physical abuse is not a hard thing, and it really, really is. But when it's mental and you
yeah,
can't physically show something, that is really, really hard. And I want to be careful about both sides of that because both are valid and both happen all the time more than we expect them to. And yeah, safety is such a big thing because when you wake up one day and you're like, I don't feel safe anymore, is the weirdest
right,
sentence that has ever come out of my mouth of this is so wild, right? And so,
yeah,
what was it like to kind of have all of these emotions and responses and reactions and feelings to, I made this decision to spend a good chunk of my life with this person, and we've had a family together, and now there's things where it's like, this is not how it started, and this is not good for anyone to continue in the way that we've been continuing, because I'm still reeling from a lot of emotionality too, and I can
Mhm.
only imagine having kids in this situation. If you could
Yeah.
put any kind of name to the emotions, to the feelings during that time, kind of what would you say? Or what jumps out?
It was an overwhelm, a hodgepodge of a mash of a mud pie
That's
of
it. That's
stuff.
it.
And when you stirred it, there were chunks of this that would come up and chunks of that would come up. And you really, I was again lucky enough. I was able to get into the shelters outreach program, and the ladies there were very good at helping me sort out what chunk was coming to the surface at the time because you're trying to figure out what's happening on the outside of you, and you're also trying to figure out what's happening on the inside of you. So the emotions that are coming up, I mean, um, and and one thing I did have too in the shelter system was a place to disperse rage, because
Mhm,
rage was one of the biggest ones that was unpalatable as an emotion that had to be released, because I didn't know if the rage was at me, at
mm,
him, at the world for not helping me, at what. It was just there. And the ability to be able to release it the way I was allowed to release it in the help that I got through the shelter system was amazing. We had scream pillows, we had a punching dummy, we had screaming sessions where we were allowed to just let it loose. We had sessions in which we were allowed to just emotionally release. And rage was the biggest one that the women felt in the groups that I was a part of. Rage was the biggest one that we really were allowed to release safely, and the probably the deepest one. Then anger, then sadness, depression, the disbelief of being duped was
mhm.
also one that was unbelievable. And I don't even have like that one is just so you just sit there and you go, how could I not have seen it? But you were already groomed to not see it.
Yeah.
You're nervous. Your mind was taken out of it, and you were running with your nervous system. You were already in fight or flight mode, so you were living. So you couldn't see what was happening, right? And in this processing of all of these emotions, oh boy, like it was the biggest pot of mud pie that I have ever created or
Mhm,
seen or tried to untangle in my entire life. And as I began to filter that through this incredibly thick blanket that I was given with the shelter system, and getting into counseling and therapy and that kind of stuff and whatnot. The and as pieces were pulled away so that I could analyze them one by one, it was really amazing. I had no idea that they were existing at that time,
mm,
and they were all existing together as one, and it was explosive. It was volcanic is the best way I can describe it. It was absolutely volcanic. I never knew what was going to come out from here. There was always love here, but I never knew what was coming forward in that hurt, in that pain, in that dismay. That's the biggest one. There was dismay. What the have I just been through? You
mhm.
know? So yeah.
Like, what was it like for your children to kind of just witness and to, have a dad that is not safe to be around? You know what I mean? And I don't know their ages, but yeah, just oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
Well, they're both adults, young adults now. They struggled. There was a lot that was going on. A lot went on. There were the obvious things of, it's my fault. And that was a big one that we had to go through, that the child was taking it upon themselves, right? Then the child was projecting it onto the safe parent. And that was another phase, and then there was another phase. So as they matured, these phases came out of them, I've got the children in a place where it's different, and I'm taking that responsibility on my shoulders to have helped guided the healing to some degree, and they've guided most of their own healing because they had healing tools that were offered to them. They took advantage of them when they needed to, and they left them when they didn't need them. My one daughter is amazing right now. She gets 90s in school and is really quite a brilliant young musician, actress, triple threat, dancer, that kind of stuff. My other daughter doing so very well on her own as just graduating nursing school. I'm so proud of her. And I couldn't be more proud of the women that they are becoming, the strong, independent women that they are becoming because of all of this. And I think that I was able to show them as an example how to get through it, how to heal, how to be a person that survives this type of stuff and can move forward in life. And that was the most important thing, that the most important gift I could give them
Absolutely.
was, to be that example for them and to be able to show them that they can do it too. So yeah, there was some tough moments with them, but they're doing okay, and I'm really super proud of them.
Good. That's
So
awesome. What
yeah,
was the start of your healing journey? What, because again, that's a whole process. And as you said at the very beginning, like it's something that we never quite arrive at. So what was the start? And then kind of what throughout the years has kind of given you peace to be able to use as tools in different modalities?
the start of my healing journey was the physical move away, moving out to the country, having peace and quiet. I have deer that constantly come around my home, and they deer show up. I'm a very spiritual person, so deer show up when the heart needs healing.
Mm.
So I knew that they were coming to help me heal. And then it was a few months later, my daughter came home, and that again was an incredible sense in healing. But I think the biggest step in that healing was getting into my new home, unpacking those boxes, receiving the divorce in the mail in my new home exactly 24 hours after I had moved in. Then, bless my mom, she passed away exactly 1 month after my 55th birthday, the
Mm.
year that I moved away to freedom. And she waited until I was safe, and she passed quietly in her sleep. And that was when I knew the healing journey, the door had been opened. Mom knew I was free and that I was safe, and she could go on to where she needed to be with dad. And um, I could now step into what I needed to do. I started with yoga. I started diving into my spirituality. I started figuring out things about the vagus nerve. I started looking into the healing of the body, with and how we actually physically hold the pain and the diseases that it causes, that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of research into this healing journey, and sort of that's where I began, was just looking into what I needed. So I needed yoga, I needed restorative yoga, I needed sound bath, I needed the peace and quiet. I needed the peeper frogs outside my window at night and be able to open the window quietly and just allow the warm spring breeze to come through. I needed to be, at my cottage. I needed to go to the grocery store. I needed chocolate. There were many things, and it was literally about what I needed. I grew this healing that I had to do. I found out, I put myself first. I did the self-care, I did the self-love, and that was the big thing. I learned how to love myself. I learned to look in the mirror and say, "Hey, you're a beautiful person. You did not deserve this. You endured something that was not your responsibility. That was not because of you." Right. And I had to say that over and over again. Affirmations were massive. I can't believe how simple words like that. I mean, we know that words can damage because
Yeah.
they have. We're living examples of that, right?
Yeah.
We also need to understand that words can heal. And I promised myself I would talk gently to myself. And I did. I journaled that and all of these incredible things. One thing that I let go of was the necessity to have a partner in my life. The thoughts that the social norms, I don't need to be a social norm. I can be different, and it's
Yeah.
okay. Those were the healing starts, the places where I began.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Was
Thank
there
you.
anything that surprised you in what a yoga session would do, with what words would do, journaling, anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have created a life out of the healing that I have. So that surprised me. It surprised me that we treat ourselves so harshly, right down from the way we walk on a treadmill at the gym to the way we do our dishes. We treat ourselves so harshly as human beings. We have learned to self-abuse in a way, and not feel that we deserve the loving kindness of our own dignity and respect from within. And that was one of the biggest surprises that I discovered along this healing journey is, wow, we are really hard on self. So we need to learn to talk more gently. We need to learn to use that gentle loving dish soap for our hands when we're doing dishes. The words within the yoga sessions were always gentle. They were always reassuring. And as I listened to the guides more and more, I realized that I had not been gentle enough to myself, even though I thought I had been. I hadn't been, and we really need to take that step forward and just really, because we can't expect anybody else to treat us that way if we are not treating ourselves that way. Right. And that's the energy that we allow into our sacred circles of our aura. Right? So if we're not being loving to ourselves from within, we're not from without. And the surprise was literally I was not loving enough to myself. So I had to go deeper with that. It was
Yeah.
really quite an incredible part of the journey.
That's wonderful to hear. As
Yeah.
you've built and created this life for yourself, kind of what do your days look like? What are your thoughts to yourself? Are the deer still coming? Or do you have another animal or element of earth that is showing up?
Oh, I have lots that shows up. The days look completely different. I was medically retired in 2019, and I have been trying to put my world back together since then. I have stepped into some acting roles and some. I've also discovered some very deep gifts within myself. I am a psychic medium, and I read tarot very differently, and I assist people through connecting to the spiritual realm and connecting to themselves. So the days look like spending a lot of time with spirit. I see the animals differently. Blue jays come to my home often and roost in my small orchard to get the choke cherries and that type of stuff because they're hungry this time of year.
Mhm.
And I have chipmunks and squirrels that, attend the backyard and are there. The coyotes are heard all around where I am, and you can hear them at nighttime and whatnot. I have added to my pet plethora at home. I now have 3 cats that are familiars of mine. It's the purring trio of health, right?
Yep.
Cats are very, very beneficial to our health. They help stabilize our vagus nerve, and believe it or not, the deer they're everywhere all the time. They just, I'm fascinated with them. There are peeper frogs that sing me to sleep in the springtime, and turtles that show up. The crows, there's turkeys, there's wild turkeys that live around me as well. They pop their little heads out of the bush every once in a while to be there. And it's just, it's this incredible breath of nature. When I step outside of my home, I can take a deep breath of the fragrance of pine trees, and just allow that beautifulness to release, and the fresh, clean air just to be held by nature, the smell of rain falling on clean soil, and just those things to connect. I can walk out on my front yard and I can just lean on my big trees and ground myself again. So yeah, just being in nature all around to see them. Oh, I've got mourning doves too. There we go. And mourning doves are they mate for life, and they're so beautiful. And their song is just so gentle and soft. And the swans, geese, you name it. It's as if the world has taken flight again with
Mhm.
me as its guest.
Yep. It's a regular Canadian paradise
So
you have for yourself.
yeah,
I love it. It's so idyllic. And there's just something
yeah.
about nature and in any aspect, no matter what we're going through, that is really a very big, grounding, just gentle reminder. Almost
Yeah.
kind of like gives us space to just be, right?
Yeah.
Grounded is my word for 2026. And I have this book here. I have not finished it, but let me pull it out real quick. In fact, I need to get back to it. So I'm on the record for saying, help me, keep me accountable, everyone. Um, but it's the
Well,
hidden life
we
of
we will keep you accountable.
Yeah, thank you. The book is A Hidden Life of Trees, What They
Right?
Feel, How They Communicate by
Yes.
Peter Wohlleben, if I'm saying that correctly. So I needed grounded to be the word just for how ungrounded everything has felt the last couple years, right? And that's
Yeah.
part of your body knows what you need. My health
Mhm.
took a deep dive. My mental health took a deep dive. So I was kind of progressing on the right path of like, yep, all of this that's happening to you is kind of what is supposed to happen after you've gone through quite a surprising year. And so grounded just really spoke to me at the end of last year of just like, let's get in tune with nature, right? Because no matter what happens to trees, and we don't know necessarily everything that happens on the inside of them just by looking at them, but they are still so grounded. Like no matter what happens externally, they're rooted literally and
Mhm. Yep.
figuratively. How can we be and do the same? Which is just like a wild
Yep.
journey that I'm going on with just trees. So as it's getting to be springtime and we're hearing birds and we're kind of seeing fresh new life come, like, ooh, it's something, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me too, like part of that relearning was also learning my physical connection to the earth. Our nervous systems are very much like the mycelium. Um, our lungs, are very much like the roots of trees. And there's other bits and parts of us. You can see the patterns from our cellular beings, to like from our atoms, like and what's below the atom. Like, I mean, we know the atom is the smallest particle, but there's something beneath that, right? And we know that there these correlations are for a reason and these patterns are for a reason. That connection, finding that depth of connection was so incredibly healing. And also spending a great deal of time, believe it or not, alone with myself, finding myself, learning who I was. Because even from the days before I had met my ex, and actually I don't even want to own that, before I met the ex, really didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
So I have spent the last 3 years of my life finding out who Lisa is. And
Yep.
boy, I think she's a pretty funky, really cool person, right?
Yeah.
She's smiley, she's giggly, she's capable, she's, she's fun to be around. She cracks jokes. People laugh. you um, I'm uplifting, and that connection really helped me find that within myself and allowed me to be me outside of the social constraints of, oh no, you can't do that in public. Well, actually, I can. I'm going to crack a really lousy George Carlin joke in public. And you know what? I'm going to see who's going to laugh. Because I want to see who's going to laugh because that makes me smile. Right.
Yeah.
And I've done it, and it's actually kind of fun because there are people that are snickering behind their hand because they know the joke or whatever, or they've heard it. And they don't want to show that they're laughing, but they are laughing, but it uplifts. And that's really where we need to be, I think, with each other, is we need to get out of the pounding down of human beings because we know that that comes from the upper ranks of how society is built right now. Suppress the low and oppress, right? We need to release that. We need to stop allowing that to be our management system. And we need to raise ourselves up from the inside, start with self, and then see what you can spread out to to a few people. If you can have someone beside you giggle in the coffee lineup, if you've got $1.50 left on that gift card and you're never going to use that $1.50, it's going to sit in the pile of gift cards at home. Turn around to the person behind you, offer it to them, or tell the cashier, give this to the next person in line, please. Do those one hit wonders that give somebody a boost in their day. It's going to boost the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. One small
Yep.
act of kindness at a time. That's from some movie or
Absolutely.
book, I cannot remember. But as we're wrapping up
Yep.
here and this time has just completely flown by, we kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what is next for you in this continuing book of healing, but just kind of how do you see your current story unfolding? And there's many, many more chapters to be lived.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to take things one day at a time. I am going to continue to love myself and step forward into what spirit offers me, the opportunities. I'm going to continue living in nature with nature as one with nature. I'm building a psychic mediumship business. So I am giving mediumship nights in small venues right now and loving doing that. That connection with spirit, connecting with people is amazing. I will be launching a website shortly that is going to offer tarot readings and give you an idea of where my workshops are going to be. The growth on that will eventually be to do these things live online so that I can incorporate more people around the world and just help people connect to themselves from the inside out and help them heal um, through the things that I found through giving sound bath and reading tarot and giving them insight to self, and letting them know that it's okay, letting them know that being human is okay, that we don't have to be up here, that being here is where we start, that there is a ground zero and that ground zero is okay. And I'm hoping, not hoping, I'm knowing that my contribution to this is going to open a few doors for people to be able to see themselves in different lights. And that's all I want to do is to be able to spread the love.
Good. And you will do it. Consider it done, right? We're just we're just starting
Yes.
another door to step into. Lisa, thank you so much today for
Right.
your time and your wisdom. Thank you for your story. There's so many things that we shouldn't have to live through, yet we do. And even just thinking of, other folks that I've had on the show who've walked through not an easy time, through a really, really dense
Yeah.
forest, and it gets me every time because it's like I'm in a different forest, but it's all connected, right, of walking through stuff. So,
Yeah.
thank you for surviving. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Because if anything, this completely helped me today, and I know that'll help so many others who listen. So, thank you, thank you.
It's my absolute pleasure, Michaela. And I'm so grateful to be here and to be able to help you to help everyone else. And I'm hoping to continue to spread the love just one person at a time.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, give it a rating, and review while you're at it. It really goes a long way. And check out the show notes for all the ways to stay connected with me and our guests. Until the next episode.